Hello and welcome to ArtJam's Pencil Drawing of a Lion. This is part 2, shading the lion's face. Here we have a completed drawing. This is what you're aiming for. Before you can begin shading, you should have completed the video part 1, layout of grid and drawing the lion's face. If you have not viewed and completed part 1, you need to do so now and then return to this video, the shading part. You need to cover your work surface and place the line drawing you did in part 1 beside the pattern or photographic image of the lion on your work surface. Take out your supplies and sharpen the black pencil. The first art tip we're going to give you is to protect your drawing at all times by placing a clean blank sheet of paper between your hand and your drawing. We will begin shading the darkest areas using the black pencil. If you look at the photograph, you will see that the darkest areas are around the eyes, the nose, and the mouth. Hold your pencil away from the point when you're shading. You're not writing your name, you're doing a drawing, so back up from the point just a bit. Shade slowly with short strokes, and don't hold the pencil sideways and swish it back and forth like you did in first grade. Don't do this. What you want to do is create values using the point of the pencil. This means you will have to sharpen your pencil often. And now that you have a sharp point, finish shading in the darkest areas. Once you have completed the dark areas, we're going to draw white fur using the scratch stick. And I mean the little whispers of fur and whiskers that we see on the lion's face. Here's the completed drawing again, and you can see the little white lines. Basically, you're going to make in little indentions with the point of the scratch stick wherever you see whiskers and white fur. Now that you have scratched in your white whiskers and fur, let's examine the image of the lion carefully. And notice that any area that is not white, like around the chin, the muzzle, and little areas of the eye, or black, like the parts you shaded in previously, then the remaining part of the square will be a middle gray. So we're going to begin shading the gray area, starting with square 1. In the upper left corner. Use the point of your pencil and short strokes. Once you have shaded in the entire square a middle gray, you're going to take the paper stub out of your kit and burnish or smudge the gray you've just shaded in. This is going to give it a smoother look. Once you have burnished the entire square using the black pencil, make sure it's sharp. Start adding details. For example, around the ear where it's dark, I'm adding in darker area. Notice you can now see the little white indentions you made earlier. The most important thing throughout the drawing is to look at the photo of the lion and add detail. The more detail you add, the more realistic your picture will look. You can also create textures with the point of the pencil. Use short or long dark strokes to create fur. Remember, this is a furry animal. So here I am making little dash lines to create a furry texture. You can also use your eraser to draw with and create lighter areas. So here I am adding in lighter areas with the eraser. Then I'm going to go back with my pencil and add more texture. We are now going to shade square 2. You're going to repeat the steps you took in square 1. Shade the entire square gray, burnish with the paper stub, create darker details and textures, draw with the eraser as needed. You're going to use these steps for every square. Each square should take about 15 to 20 minutes, and you should take a break after completing 1 or 2 squares. You can complete this drawing in several sessions. So very quickly for square 2, you shade it in, you burnish it, and then using your pencil and or eraser, you add detail in. You can now take a break or move on to shade square 3. You repeat the basic steps once again. For square 3, however, what I did was I mapped in the black triangular shapes that make up his ears so that I know where to add in dark areas later. Then I shaded in the entire square gray, burnished it, and then began to add details with the point of the pencil, making sure my pencil sharpened the whole time. I used the eraser to add some fur and lighter gray areas and then added more detail. This completes squares 1, 2, and 3. And so now whenever you're ready, move on to shade square 4. In square 4, I left it white around the eye and I didn't shade the eyeball at first. Once I shaded in all the rest, I burnished it. And then I went in and shaded the eyeball a gray color. Remember to leave the little white speck in the eye white. Don't shade over that so that your eye looks alive instead of like a dead fish eye. Once I had shaded in this area, I noticed that the lid of the eye cast a shadow across the eyeball, and so I shaded that in a little bit darker gray. Remember, when you shade in this shadow, it needs to be curved because you are shading a sphere, a round ball. Now that you've completed square 4, you can either take a break or move on to square 5. Shade in the entire square once again, burnish it, and then look at your photograph carefully for details. Use the point of your pencil. Make sure that it's sharpened at all times. You can use the eraser to draw with as well. And I also burnished it a little bit to smooth things out. As you move on to square 6, notice that it too has an eyeball in it. So the first thing you do is you shade it in, leaving a little white area in the eyeball unshaded, and burnish it. And then go back with the point of your pencil and shade in the eyeball, leaving the white speck. Then there also is a shadow on this eyeball. Make sure it's curved. And then add details using your eraser and your pencil. Remember to look at the photograph for details. You can take a break or you can go on to square 7. It has a jawline, so I kind of mapped that in, and then I shaded the square gray, burnished it, and then again added details. There's a highlight along the left jaw of the lion, the left side. Make sure you put that in. Take a break or move on to square 8. Again, repeat the steps. Shade in all the gray that isn't black. Burnish it. And then here, look for details. The muzzle is here that is white. I also needed to complete a little section of the mouth. This is where the little dots that the whiskers grow out of are located. Notice they're not in a straight line and they're not perfectly round. You can take a nice break or you can move on to shade square 9. Square 9 is it's on the right side and there's jaw and a shadow in that section, so make sure that you put that in. Then you shade the entire square gray. You burnish it. I use the eraser to draw in the highlight. Then I added details in the mane of the lion. Using texture again, strokes with the pencil. There's also the whiskers are going to be drawn in here. Take a good look at those whiskers. They're not straight out like a brush. They're curly and curvy. I then chose to move down to square 12. I shaded the entire square gray and then I burnished it, following the basic steps again. And then I used the eraser to create some fur in the mane, some lighter fur, and then I took my sharpened pencil and created the darker furry areas, looking for detail the whole time. You can now take a break, or you can go on to shade square 11, shade the whole thing gray, and then you burnish it just like in square 1. Then I'm using the eraser to draw out the chin white. And then once I do that, it's a matter of looking, and finding the details to put in to make my line look as real as possible. The final square is square 10. Repeat all the steps from square 1, shade it in gray. Then you burnish it. And then once again, add details with your eraser and your pencil. Now that you've completed all 12 squares, you really need to take a good look at your drawing and take a look at the photograph and make adjustments that you think you need to make. Add additional details, perhaps correct a little spot that you're not too happy with. Do so using your eraser, your sharpened pencil, and the paper stub. And here we have several finished drawings. One's by an adult. This one is by an 11-year-old student. This drawing is by a 7-year-old. And this one is also by a 7-year-old student. So now that these drawings are finished, we would like to frame them. Frame them in a mat behind glass or plexiglass. If you're not ready to display your work, store it in a sleeve or envelope. For more delicious ArtJam projects, go to www.artjams.net.